It's a showdown of epic proportions. 58 total cores of complete madness on the table right here in front of me. I set out to do a direct comparison between them, something that I didn't touch on in my initial review video of the brand new 32-core beast from AMD, the Threadripper 2990WX. So let's find them appropriate homes and let the rendering begin. Ready to dive into custom water cooling but unclear about what parts you might need? Check out Thermaltake's new M360 Plus RGB kit. Featuring a D5 pump res combo, 16mm hard tube, Pacific C Pro fittings, and the best RGB implementation on the market, the M360 Plus fits all mainstream Intel and AMD sockets and is fully expandable as your system evolves. Check out the link in the video description to learn more. One of the reasons I didn't do any direct comparisons in my launch review was that it was, well, not really on launch day, and a lot of other reviewers had already published content that contained very similar information. I wanted to instead focus on the 2990WX itself, its strengths and weaknesses, and how adjusting things like core count and simultaneous multi-threading can affect performance. But after having used the 2990 now for a few weeks, I wanted to rewind a bit. As I discussed in this video, without a doubt, this is the most powerful consumer-level desktop processor we've ever seen released from any company. But this is really kind of a broad statement. Overall, sure, it's certainly true. But when we deep dive into specific test results, there are some things that the 2990 is actually straight up awful at. Most obviously, it's really bad to game on, but as nobody is picking up an $1,800 processor because they want to crush in Fortnite, I'm not particularly worried about that. Less obviously, it's not fantastic to edit with in Premiere or while transcoding footage in Handbrake. Before people jump up and start screaming about how this isn't what this chip is meant for, as they did in my review video, I am aware of the intended use for the 2990WX. It's a workstation chip for use in virtualization machines, render farms, and in instances where the operator will be doing 4 or 5 multi-threaded workloads at once. However, I guarantee you that there are plenty of users out there who expected smoother timeline scrubbing and faster exporting in Adobe Premiere and were disappointed when they booted up their new machine for the first time. I know personally I was underwhelmed, as I had committed to using this Threadripper chip for at least a few weeks to fully get a feel for what it could do on my daily grind. It honestly made me miss Intel, something that I hadn't really felt ever since I switched my daily system over to the 1950X. So I got to thinking, I have both an 8700K and a 7980XE, which can do remarkable things in the programs that I use most often, but for different reasons. The i9 7980XE, of course, is just a monster with 18 cores that with any luck you can clock up to 4.5 gigahertz. As Premiere does love clock speed, this might just be the way to go, although the price puts it out of the range of most consumers at $1,800, the same as the Threadripper chip. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the boring old 8700K. Recent changes made by Adobe have allowed the 8700K and any recent Intel processor with onboard graphics to leverage that iGPU while exporting by using hardware encoding, significantly shaving time off of projects. So I wanted to see A, if I should switch back to Intel, and B, if I did, which of these two processors should I use? Would it just be more practical to go with a $350 processor here, with a simpler cooling solution, a standard ATX motherboard, and overall a more compact, power-efficient build? In order to find out, I chose two separate Adobe Premiere projects. One was a simple 1-minute 49-second 4K video file, and the other was a complex 17-minute 35-second project. In fact, it was my August monthly build video, which you guys can find the link to down in the description. It has multiple layers, color correction, 1000x speed changes, and other effects. What I did with each file was export them in Premiere at both 1080p and 4K. So overall, there were 4 tests for each CPU. The simple file downres to 1080, the simple file exported at its native 4K, the complex file downres to 1080, and the complex file exported at 4K. The test setups for each system included 32 gigs of 3200 speed Trident Z DDR4 running at that frequency, although clearly the 8700Ks was running in dual channel versus the quad channel for our other processors. The 2990WX was run in the Gigabyte X399 Aorus Extreme, the 7980 was in the Asus Prime X299 Deluxe, and the 8700K used the Gigabyte Z370 Aorus Gaming 7. All processors were run at stock clock speeds. This first slide shows the simplest task, exporting the short, simple project to 1080p. All three processors do well here, coming in under a minute, with the 7980 actually completing the export in 37% of the file's real runtime, a crazy number. The 2990 and the 8700K come in just slightly over 50% of real time. Any instance where your system is exporting a project this quickly relative to video file length, you're sitting pretty. Do note though the order of the finish. Our second slide takes a look at that same simple project, but this time exported to 4K. Of course, times are going to increase, but I was very surprised that the 8700K really seemed to shine in this test, matching exactly the 7980's performance. The 2990 finishes in what amounts to a fairly distant third. In slide 3, we move over to our longer, complex project, something more akin to what normal videos tend to look like. Exporting it to 1080p saw a fairly wide spread in completion time, with the 7980 once again crushing it. The 2990 does redeem itself a bit here, finishing in second, while it appears the 8700K actually struggled somewhat. And the last slide, the full, long project exported to 4K. I was impressed with the 8700K in this test, and I think after taking a look at all 4 slides, we can definitely draw at least some preliminary conclusions, at least for my workflow and anyone producing similar content. Number 1, the 7980XE rules all. It's no surprise that the 18-core chip that seems tailor-made for Adobe Premiere wins this comparison hands down. It finished first outright in 3 of the 4 tests, often by very wide margins, and it tied for first in the other. Number 2, the 8700K's hardware accelerated rendering seems to really shine at 4K while not really being leveraged all that much in the lower 1080p resolution. Still overall a very impressive showing considering the price of this mainstream chip versus the other 2 extremely high-end enthusiast products. Number 3, the 2990 is a fair performer for video editing at 1080p. Although it never finished first when we were exporting to 1080, it did fine, putting up reasonable results that I could live with. However, number 4, 4K exporting performance was simply put bad. This brand new $1,800 32-core CPU got hammered by even the 8700K. As this is how I personally do my projects, I've made the decision to move on from the 2990WX in my personal system for the time being. It just doesn't make sense for my use case, and this is something that I touched on in my initial review. Perhaps if or when Adobe or Windows have some changes implement to better utilize all of the 32 cores here, I can give it another shot. It'll be interesting if Intel can keep up its dominance in this product and application space once their new 28 cores launch. But I guess for now, we'll just have to wait and see. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a thumbs up down below and check out the merchandise store linked in the description. As always, guys, get subscribed if you are not already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.